Hello and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. OpenSide's newest product, OnToAir Forms, is the Airtable Forms solution you've been looking for. Visit openside.com to see how their OnToAir products will take your Airtable workflow to the next level. For a limited time, get OnToAir Forms free when you purchase the OpenSide OnToAir Actions Zapier connector. A warm welcome to our guest this week, Will Christensen. Will lives in Athens, Georgia, and is the co-founder Innovation at DataAutomation, a systems integration company that helps businesses automate and become more efficient. DataAutomation services all kinds of clients, but their particular niche is in the close-knit community of e-commerce. Before rebuilding their clients' systems, Will and his team do an automation audit of a company's existing process and speak to as many employees as possible to learn on a micro level what is working and what isn't. Reception to new automated systems can require a huge culture shift in a company, and Will is conscious of how to facilitate that shift successfully. During his demo, Will shows us an awesome website he built called Seller Software, a handy-dandy software directory for Amazon sellers. It's an aggregation of several hundred hours of research and curation on almost every Amazon seller app that's available out there. The Airtable magic for Will's project happens behind the scenes, as he had built out an Airtable base with all of this app data in it that he wanted to use as a content management system for his website. Naturally, being a fan of DIY integrated solutions, Will built his own custom plugin to connect his base to the back end of his site. This allowed him to combine the flexibility and power of WordPress themes with the database capabilities and easy editing that Airtable provides. So as he continues to update the software directory in Airtable, changes are seamlessly pushed to the Seller Software website. Check out the show notes if you're interested in learning more about Will's WordPress and Airtable integration, and also visit BuiltOnAir.com to sign up for our mailing list, where you can get weekly updates on new Built on Air episodes and other fun Airtable things. Hey, Will, thank you so much for being with us on Built on Air. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
So Will Christensen's the name. Automation's the game. I am the co-founder of DataAutomation. We're an automation and integration company. When we started the company, I actually didn't even realize it, but we started a systems integration company. So we do systems integration. And then on the B2B side or B2C side, however you want to look at that, we help businesses take their manual processes and automate them using things like Zapier or just straight up custom code.
Cool. And how long have you been working on system stuff? Was DataAutomation kind of your first dive into that? And how did you get into this weird world?
Yeah, good question. So about 8 years ago, I was the low man on the totem pole at an agency, and I was handed 16 hours of manual labor, just copying and pasting in Excel every single week.
Oh my gosh.
Basically 2 days of my life was dedicated to pivot tables and copying and pasting data for all of our clients. We had like 18 or 19 different clients that I was doing reporting for at the time.
Wow.
And this was kind of my first real job out of college. And I was looking at that and I was like, this is insane. Like there has got to be a better way to do this. My immediate supervisor showed me how to do a VLOOKUP in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
And I flipped out. I was like, wait, you can like take data from that spreadsheet and pull it into this spreadsheet automatically? Yeah, exactly. Mind blown. And I was just like, okay, this is crazy. What, like, how? No way. And I started to Google all of the Excel formulas that like you could combine them and do if statements and I started to like chunk away at that 16 hours, and I cut it down to probably 14 just with formulas.
Nice.
And then I was like, okay, well, maybe I can take that a step further. And I started doing macros, and like I would record a macro and then replay it. And then, and I was like, okay, cool. And I'd cut it down to about 8 hours. So I'd cut the whole thing in half because I had like all these macros going. And then I was like, what if I could make it so Excel would open up a web browser and like actually download these reports? And so that took me weeks to figure out how to like code Excel into opening up a web browser. And I eventually taught myself to code in Visual Basic, and like remote controlled the browser and Excel to kind of get the whole thing. Well, at this point, my whole process, besides just the reviewing at the end, was automated, but my computer was locked up for like 6 hours.
Right.
And so I was like, maybe I could make it wake up in the middle of the night. And so I did just that. I made my computer wake up at 3 a.m. before I came into work. And then when I came into work, my reports were ready and I just had to review them and send them out. So I cut my 16-hour process down to 2 or 3 over the course of several months. And I just got hooked on automation. I was like, there have got to be other people out there who need this sort of thing.
Right.
And so, from there, I kind of started talking to different people, and I became like the Excel guru in the office. And so people would ask me for help, and I really loved that. I was like, okay, I think I could make something out of this. Well, I got an opportunity to move to a tech incubator in Athens, Georgia. So across the country, I moved from Utah to Athens, Georgia. And when I got here to Athens, Georgia, I was working in marketing in another one of the startups, and I pitched the partners on the idea of an automation consultancy where we would build automations for other companies. We would use Zapier, we would use Airtable, we would use all of these other pieces. At the time, I had no clue what Airtable was when we started the whole thing. Got introduced to that after the fact. We'll talk about that in a minute. But got into automation because of 16. I really should thank those guys. I need to probably write them a thank you letter. Like, thank you for giving me 16 hours of manual reporting, because it led to where I am today.
Right. Yeah. I always find it's easier to kind of learn how to do things when you have a very specific problem you have to solve. You're like, how do I just not make myself like go insane sitting in this office? And you're like, I automate everything. Very
Yes.
cool. So then from sort of you pitch this consultancy, is that your current company, DataAutomation?
Correct.
So, cool.
Correct. Yep. So DataAutomation has been around for about 3 years now, and it started with just me. And we've grown the team, and we are now certified Zapier developers. So like if you have a SaaS product, we can actually connect your app to Zapier. So Airtable didn't use this for this necessarily, but we build those integrations to Zapier. And then we also are certified Zapier experts, which is where I met BuiltOnAir.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your sort of specialty. I know you guys, you can automate pretty much anything, but you kind of have this niche in the kind of e-commerce world. So tell us a little bit about how, like what are the special needs for, specifically e-commerce clients, and, what kind of interesting solutions have you found?
Great question. So in the e-commerce space, originally our goal was to just be more open, and we would help SaaS products that wanted to connect to Zapier or build integrations, native integrations, things like that. And then we would help customers just automate manual processes inside their business. We have a sister company called Seller Labs, which is a company that focuses on Amazon seller automation. They have a product called Feedback Genius, another one called Ignite. And these products help Amazon sellers automate pieces of their business, and that's specifically what they're focused around, is building SaaS products. So we were more interested in kind of the one-off projects, and we started to see some synergy between what was there, and our developers had experience with e-commerce as well. And so one thing led to another, and we kept getting introduced to more people who we knew in this tight-knit e-commerce community. to the point where now it's a significant portion of our business. We help e-commerce sellers transfer order data back and forth between different systems. We've built some modular automation of our own. It's not a full-blown SaaS product by any means. I wouldn't call it that, but we're able to literally connect to just about any system out there and move data back and forth between systems in bulk. And when Zapier is the appropriate tool, we'll use Zapier. But when it's not connected to Zapier, we're capable of building a connection.
Very cool. Yeah, I think the unique thing right about e-commerce is there's, all the order data comes from one source, but it needs to go so many different places. And just from the e-commerce companies, that I've peeked into, a surprising amount of people are just doing it via like spreadsheet exports and imports, which just gets so just terrible, outright terrible. So do you so with e-commerce, you mentioned, sometimes you'll use Zapier, sometimes you guys are just sort of, developing your own connector. Where does Airtable come in? Like, what projects are a good fit for incorporating Airtable, and what do you use it for?
We use Airtable all the time inside our development process whenever we need a really quick way for the user to interact with data. So often a common place that we use it in e-commerce connections is mapping. So on one side of the fence, they call Amazon, and on the other side of the fence, they call it Amazon.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so the computer can't tell the difference between those two things. It thinks those are not the same ID. So you have to give the computer a place where you can map and say anything that looks like this, but actually is like this, is the same. And so that sort of a map has to be very easily accessible to a human and a computer. And Airtable makes that bridge just so easy. So we'll spin up an Airtable, throw it out to our client. Our developers will connect to it, grab out any maps they need, and do that. I do a thing called an automation audit, where I'll come into a company and we'll interview each individual person in the company, and we try to do a culture shift change for the company so that they can focus now on automation versus focusing on, like, the low man on the totem pole has to realize that it's okay to raise your hand and say this is inefficient versus I'm just the low man on the totem pole, I have to do it. And so this whole process I actually track in Airtable. So I go in and I have a list of all of the people who I'm supposed to interview and all of the potential automations that we do, all of the automations that we finish. So a lot of the automation, like I track my automation in Airtable often.
Cool.
So we use it. Got many different Airtables.
Right. Yes, many. Yeah, I love kind of that way of using it for easy lookup tables that people can also update or add to if needed. It's kind of a great elegant solution for that. I'm really interested in this sort of like culture shift change part of your process that you mentioned. So how exactly do you go about that? And also, what do you do when you encounter, maybe some employees that are a little bit suspicious of automations? How do you kind of win them over to your side?
That's a great question. So my process for going into a company and instilling a culture shift like that is actually a little different than you might expect. Initially we started kind of at the top because we figured the people at the top would know about a lot of the inefficiencies that were going on and would be able to help direct us. They're also the decision makers, so they'd be able to give us the budget to go in and actually do that. And we discovered that we would do a lot of proposals and we'd get excited about it, but then it would never really get adopted, or it just would fall flat. And so then we decided, okay, what if we went to the very bottom? So we had one or two meetings with the CEO or the C-level executives, and then we went right to the person who is like fresh out of college, brand new intern, who has to do 16 hours of manual reporting every week. And what if we met with them and gained their trust? And so this culture shift change that we try to do with companies has to start there, has to start with those individuals at the bottom of the totem pole. And as soon as you start meeting with them and you talk to them and say, hey, your boss is paying me to talk to you right now, that all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, they're willing to put resources into me. So there's some like immediate light bulbs that go on that way. Then the second thing I do is I spend the first 15 minutes of my conversations just gaining their trust, helping them understand that I've been the low man on the totem pole. I've been where they are. I understand how annoying that is. And I've learned a lot about how to get around that. And then we look at some of the common barriers that they face when they're getting into that. And
Mhm.
we kind of help them overcome some of those barriers.
Cool. Yeah, I like that sort of approaching it from a, the only reason I'm doing this is because I was you and I didn't want to do it anymore. Yeah, but I think that's always hard where, some people, I think, to any sort of top executive, it's like, let me automate stuff. And they're like, wow, that sounds great. But for the people who are actually interacting with it every day, there are so many more, complexities, I think, and things where
Nuances to the
it's,
process.
yeah, exactly. So many nuances. And I think, kind of sitting down with people and being like, I want to understand this, right? To be able to not make it a system that you have to conform to, but one that kind of conforms to the reality of whatever you have to do, is, kind of a better way to go about it. So I really like your approach.
It's
And
pretty well.
so what are you normally doing these meetings remotely, or will you go visit the companies?
Depends. Sometimes I'll go out and visit them in person. I'll go out and sit down with the company and say, hey, like, what's going there? I've got a guy who's looking to have me come out to Louisville here in a couple of weeks.
Cool.
And it's an on-site meeting where we're kind of tearing apart everything that he's doing in his tech stack and trying to decide what to do next. I do a lot of them remotely. It's actually very effective to do it remotely because I can immediately say, okay, now let's share your screen. I can remote control their screen with Zoom. We can go in, we can record the session, and then they can go back and look at it later. So the remote feature is actually a benefit versus like if I'm sitting next to them, I can't really control their screen without being like, hey, move over for a second. Hey, hold on, give me the mouse. No, like it's easy because we can both have access to that mouse and keyboard at the same time. And I can kind of walk them through because my goal in that meeting is not to just do it for them. It's to show them how to automate.
Right.
So, if they're doing a lot of Google Sheets, I've got tips and tricks that they can do inside Google Sheets. And sometimes my tip or trick for Google Sheets is you should be using Airtable.
Right.
So it just depends on what I'm looking at. But a lot of times Airtables, like their formulas don't quite match up with exactly what they need. And so Sheets is a better option. And so I'll teach them tips or tricks about both systems.
Very cool. And I guess that's a great sort of segue into the kind of demo portion, since you will be sharing your screen and walking us through one of your Airtable projects. So tell us a little bit about what you'll be demoing for us.
So we are constantly so we're at a tech incubator. The tech incubator is called Groundsphere, and at the tech incubator, we're constantly looking at what does the world need that it doesn't already have, right? What SaaS product, what company could serve the world better than it already is? And one of the things that we feel like is lacking a little bit is a directory of every single piece of software that services the Amazon sellers or the sellers, the e-commerce sellers, so that they can know which piece of software would be awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll share my screen here. So we created a product called Seller Software. And is that coming up okay?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, so this is Seller Software. This is basically just a place where we've aggregated several 100 hours worth of research, and we've gone out and curated a list of, all of the different software where people can find it. So we're looking for, we got ratings and screenshots and all sorts of information that we've curated to try to help you figure out what you should be going in. So we've got a bunch of different categories and whatnot. Well, when we very first decided to do this, we were like, okay, well, all of this data, when we're researching it, it needs to be housed somewhere. And I was like, well, I think we should house it. At first, we actually were putting it into a Google spreadsheet. And I was like, whoa, stop. Let's put this in Airtable because we can actually take, images. We can take all that sort of data. And then I was like, what if we made it so that this was actually connected to a like like extension on WordPress? Like, what if we made it so that this could all be housed in the background, and if there was a new category added, it would automatically add it here. And if like what if we made it so that this was like totally dynamic? And so what we you know, like you click on this and inventory management actually goes and looks stuff up in Airtable.
Right.
And like, here's my list, and you know, I go to my section here, and this, all of this data, what if we housed all of this data inside Airtable? And my partners were like, that sounds interesting. So that's what we did. This is our seller software Airtable, and every single one of these items that's in here is all put into the different pieces. So I have a link to the site, and you'll notice that it's a formula. So inside my formula here, it literally just says, pull in the category for the breadcrumb and the slug.
Nice.
And I actually define the slug and the category and all of that information right here in this Airtable. So it gives me the ability to put all of this data into a linkable field and give everything that I need to, so that we're looking at what we need. So this whole website, the tail end of it, is 100% run on Airtable. And we even made it so that you could search for something specific. This is all connected to Airtable as well.
Very cool.
So basically we made a plugin for WordPress that allows you, and it's not totally public right now. Like, if somebody wanted to reach out to us and say, hey, like, could we use that? We were just building it for our own use. We're happy to look at further opportunities. We are a tech incubator, right? But yeah, this is when they ask, like, what's something crazy that you've done, you know, that allows you to, you know, really take some new pieces of what's there and see what's there. And this is one of the crazy things we've done.
I love it. Yeah, I think the real sort of benefit to using Airtable as a, you know, content management system for websites would be it. I mean, it's just Airtable's so fun to use, right? It's easy to put data into it as opposed to like the typical back end of a WordPress website, which I always tend to get a little frustrated with.
Well,
it's a little clunky, you know.
The cool part about this is so if you've ever heard of Elegant Themes, so Elegant Themes and Divi is the name of the theme. This is actually a Divi themed full-blown WordPress website. So this front page, I wanted the flexibility that WordPress can give, so that you're able to like mesh with your content. And let's say that you wanted an about us page, and you know, you wanted to look at some of that. I wanted that flexibility to make really amazing looking landing pages. And so, like, if you look over here at my categories page, let's go over here. We'll look at inventory management again. I wanted to be able to make a buying guide down here at the bottom that was very easy to look at, but I needed this middle section to be, you know, totally capable of being, you know, rated, and we, you know, we move around and we get all of that other information so that we could put out the data that was there. And so we married the two together and gave ourselves the ability to have WordPress, which is easy to build really nice landing pages and give the user control. And we needed an easy way to manage a directory, which is what our Airtable does in the background.
Very cool. So what is the sort of process for your team as you find new apps? Do people just, is it, you know, anyone can submit something to Airtable, or what's kind of your process for actually managing that content day to day?
So the funny part about it is I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to some of this stuff. We actually use, I have this little plugin right here. And with this plugin, I can actually create, and this specific login doesn't have it right here handy, but I can make it so that I can hit send right here. and it will take the URL of any website that I'm on and push it right into the Airtable using
Very nice.
Zapier. So like I can add a new website to this in seconds, and it's totally dynamic. It'll add it over here. Now, obviously there's some, that would just create a blank page because there's none of the, content being curated and some of those other things. And so there's some other pieces and processes that we have in place to kind of help us make this more real. And so if you're coming to the Seller Software website after this podcast and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't look completely finished, that's because it's actually still in process as far as some of the data. The plugin is totally functional. So, you can see, all of this is in here and we've got a lot of this data. If you were to go compare all of the ratings, you'll notice that all the ratings are 3. And that's because we're still in the process of finishing our ratings process to connect those dots. So this is still a website that's a work in progress. And if you notice a website that we're missing, we'd love to hear about it. And we're currently going through and categorizing and using Airtable. And the nice part is I don't have to do any website development to finish out this website. It's all Airtable, categorization work at this point.
Very nice. Yeah, it's great to just be able to, instead of having to compile every single piece of data before you push it, now you guys can just kind of separate it out and do it at your leisure, and then still provide some interesting, and valuable content in the meantime.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, do you guys have plans to eventually kind of make this plugin public, or what are,
Absolutely. I would be so at this point, it's one of those you kind of have to focus on, where the cash is, so to speak. We haven't had anybody beg for something like this. I was just looking on Product Hunt the other day, and I saw somebody who's built a sheet to website plugin. Like literally, like all it is it takes a Google spreadsheet and turns it into a website. And I was like, I probably need to get on Product Hunt or AppSumo or one of these other ones and launch that thing, because we've already got it built, it's working, it's functioning. We would just need to push it out there. So it is on the docket. It's just one of those things that you got to get there.
Right. There's only so many hours in the day. Well, once you get it up and running, let us know and we'll add it to our BuiltOnAir products list.
Nice.
Which I guess is sort of really the equivalent. What we're trying to do here is kind of like what you're doing with, the Amazon stuff. It's like, you're like, I know there are things out there like to supplement this, other app or service, but it's so hard to find all of them in one place.
Well, let me know. That sounds like a directory of products. If it's built on WordPress and you needed something, I don't know, to hook it up to Airtable, like I know a guy that built something that would make it so that list of products might work.
I wonder who that could be.
Just saying.
Very cool. Well, I love how you're, it seems like you really have this kind of great synergy where, you're always kind of, researching and developing and exploring, right? And, you have all of these kind of personal projects that in turn translate to, additional services for your clients and stuff.
Absolutely. Yep.
Very cool. So tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to learn more about your WordPress plugin in development or check out your services.
Yeah, absolutely. So roundsphere.com is the name of our tech incubator. You can always check that out. That's obviously maybe a little hard to spell, but it is literally like round like a sphere. Everybody's always like, isn't that kind of obvious? We're like, okay, yeah, we know it's obvious. DataAutomation.com is the name of the systems integration company, and you can reach us at either place. My email personally, you're welcome to email me personally, Will, WILL, at DataAutomation with 2 A's, dataautomation.com. And if you're interested in hey, I'd like to beta that, shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to more people who are interested in connecting it. It's totally built and functional. It's just, you kind of have to focus on where people are interested. So if people from this podcast wanted this to become a thing, I'd entertain anyone who wanted to talk to me about it.
Right on. Well, BuiltOnAir listeners, if you are using WordPress and Airtable and want to connect the two, reach out to Will and he'll show you how to do it.
I will.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much, Will. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And we'll be keeping tabs on your WordPress plugin and everything else you have in the works.
Cool. Looking forward to it.